Hi everyone, it's Joey Remenyi from seekingbalance.com.au. Today I have a special guest calling in from Hawaii. I want to introduce you to Gretchen Gavero, who is a psychiatrist and psychotherapist. And today we're going to talk about suicidality, existentialism, and the beautiful, healthy, normal places of very low moods. So welcome, Gretchen, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I thought I'd start today's call by reading an imagery that I wrote in one of my recent newsletters, which inspired this talk today. And so, dear listeners, I want to take you on a little journey, and we're going to talk about touching the depths of our dark places within ourselves. And that while this can be excruciatingly difficult, painful, and lonely, these are also opportunities to really touch our soul and to find the magic and the gift and the message that is somehow calling us inward. Something's taking us in there, something's pulling us down. And when we surrender into that, sometimes we get a very, very special message that's meant just for us, not for anybody else, just for us. It's this embodied, somatic, soulful wisdom. And today on our call, Gretchen and I want to really talk about bringing this out of shame and isolation, that to go into these very dark places is not only a gift to yourself, to honor it and to move through it and to grow stronger through that process. Because when we get to the other side of the dark pit of despair, we can actually feel like, wow, I got through that. I was strong enough to feel through that. I really went to my edges. I took myself to new neurological places that I mapped in my body that I felt through. And on the other side of that, there can be a feeling of relief and strength. And so I really want to talk about getting through to the other side. And in a perfect world, we have at least one special person in our life who we can potentially co-explore and share some of this journey with, so we're not suffering in shame and privacy, drowning in privacy. So, Gretchen, shall we start with the little story,
Yes,
the imagery?
let's go
Okay,
for it.
okay. Imagine me walking through an arid, featureless landscape, alone and no water or food. There's thunder rumbling and lightning bolts shooting closer by the second. The noise is exquisitely chaotic. There's no shelter. I'm parched, sunburnt, and despite pitch perfect efforting, I'm out of ideas, lost. I have no map, no compass, no phone, and nowhere else to be except right here, deserted. The darkness closes in. There are no stars, no moon. There is no shape or form at all, anywhere. The atmosphere is thick, dense, and black. I rest into my breath and body, heart pounding and every tiny strand of hair raised. I'm naked to the dark world. I search for a clue, a foothold, a rock, a sign of light, but there is nothing and no one. The seduction of death sings to me with her lovely hummingbird voice. I want to die and return to the atomic song of oneness. It feels so lovely to rest in the idea of dying. But I do not die. I keep breathing. Life thrums through me. I'm at another sacred threshold. I'm asked to choose life over and over, again and again. So I keep doing that, this life gig. It keeps rolling, and I question everything, including my own purpose. Why am I here? What am I contributing to our collective? How can I honor my sense of interconnectedness and live in a world with so many fractures? It's hard. It is tremendously lonely in the deep, arid places. And it cycles over and over, returning again to more darkness year after year. Hmm. So I can just feel myself energetically sort of giving everybody a little hug who might relate to some of those deep, dark, lonely, confronting experiences. And I want to honor that we're all different. It shows up for us all differently. And that the truth is we're not alone, even though sometimes we feel alone, because the truth of our interconnectedness as living beings is very real. Gretchen, what
Mhm.
stirred in you in this moment?
I was thinking back to when I first read this on a newsletter in
Mm,
your email. And this is actually the first time we're meeting together. But when I read that email, and I get many newsletters from all kinds of things. But after reading that, and especially visualizing exactly the story that you said, I just remembered all the people this 10 years that I've worked with that were in that kind of depth of loneliness and low mood and hopelessness. And when you mentioned, you just want to extend the hug, maybe when I just sent you that note, and I didn't know you were going to reply, but when I sent you that note, it was probably the hug that I wanted to give because, you know, it is it is so brave to acknowledge when you're the reality of our emotions
mm,
and to describe it into words.
mm,
Even if we don't know what the solution is, just describing it is so helpful.
mm,
Even if you feel like you're doing it for yourself or you're describing or sharing it with someone, even if it doesn't make sense in the beginning.
mm. Which is,
Because that's how it starts for our brain to learn to figure out how can I make sense. Yeah. Make sense of that.
yeah, I want to really deeply second that conceptually, that I'm a very somatic embodied creature. So when my body takes me places, I go with it. I
Mhm.
don't seem to have too much fight or micromanaging or controlling. And so that's the mask, right? When we control and micromanage and go, "Urgh, I don't want to feel that. No, no, no." I tend to quite have a lot of trust and faith in my body. So I can go with the body and go, this is curious. All right, I'm gonna see
Yes.
what am I learning? Where will this take me? And what that means is putting time aside, because if I'm cooking dinner and dealing with my 3-year-old and my 4.5-year-old, I can't necessarily go into these deep places. So part of the process is just simply putting time aside to body scan and be with the body and get curious. Then what Gretchen's talking about is it's super confusing, moving into this quagmire and maelstrom of internal sensation in the
Hmm.
beginning is quite mystical and mysterious and confusing and muddy. And if, as we build our trust in understanding the language of our own body, we might get some patterns, some concepts, some symbols, some shapes, some memories, something might come up that is then able to be languaged in your own way. Everyone's different.
Yes.
And as we stay with it and breathe through it, and you might start dancing or journaling or tapping or whatever, but to keep yourself in your body, in the experience and shifting and moving it. Eventually, we may get a little bit more language to the point that we can construct a sentence or share it, or, it's going somewhere and it's less hibbledy-hobbledy, like a jigsaw puzzle pieces all over the floor. And part of what I want to talk about with this suicidality conversation is for me, and I have been to these low places frequently and never told anyone. Like I actually thought everybody went there. I thought it was just a common human experience. But when I go into these very dark places, something sacred happens. Like I touch something so deep and so powerful. It's like I know what to do with my life. I have these moments of awakening and clarity. And often it's when my life is off track. I'm starting to move at other people's rhythm. I'm starting to do what other people want of me. I'm starting to fall into groupthink, or I'm losing myself essentially. And these dark times really pull me back in to realign my compass and be clear on who I am and who I am not. So they're helping me fine tune my boundary of what is mine and what is not mine. And so
Yes.
going through this profound process of clearing all the jigsaw pieces is potent, powerful, and it doesn't actually need to take a long time. And I might just share this and we'll keep fleshing it out. But I
Mhm.
think because of my background in yoga and neuroscience and bloody, 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 I can go through these profoundly deep, dark experiences super quickly. Like sometimes it's just an hour. Sometimes it's certainly within 24 hours. And I think that's a huge difference to living in a slump for 6 months or 12 months or 3 years when there's not that capacity to move through the biochemical process and come out the other end going, okay, my compass is aligned and I know what to do. I know my next steps. So I'd love to talk a little bit about that. And that's a huge part of what
Mhm.
I teach and the work, part of what I contribute to the world. That
Yes.
that question, what am I contributing to the collective?
Yeah.
This deep trust in the process. And the more we can
Mhm.
keep our consciousness and our loving awareness upon our own experience, right? So body scanning, the quicker we get to that biochemical shift of softening and clarity.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So you're touching on something very important, which is taking time to really understand yourself.
Mm,
Like you said, we're all very different. Some of us can go into a slump really quickly, some of us not. For example, the gift that you and I have in this work that we do, there's a lot of alignment as far as like listening to the signals of your body and your nervous system and then figuring out what is telling us to move
mm,
on. As a therapist, I do this every day, multiple patients talking about it. And so I have a lot of practice. And so, yes, I can get through those lumps quicker. Yeah. But then there are many people who still need to find themselves or understand their story, understand their body signals and their mental signals as well
mm,
to figure out what is the picture like for me and what do I need in those moments? Why is it happening anyway? And what have happened in my life that contributed to that? And what is it that I need to do in the moment?
mm,
There's a lot of things that is required to overcome. But you don't have to do all of that all at once. Again, everyone is very, very different. The first things I tell all the people I work with is to
mm,
remember that whatever it is that you are going through right now, and it could be a suicidal episode, your thoughts are just focused on hopelessness.
mm,
Remember that however our mind is trying to handle stress or these emotions, it's not just because of one thing, it's contributed by many things. Your genetics, your life story, our role
mm,
models, like you said, the patterns gets built from the very beginning. And the
mm,
beauty of an adult brain is that we can, if we make the time to understand ourselves and how we interact with the world, patterns that are no longer helpful now, we can reshape. It does take work.
yeah.
I remind everyone that. So there's the genetics, environment, your biology, all of that, because it might seem like at the moment it's very hopeless. We don't know what to do. But if we realize that actually it's influenced by maybe 10 or so things. That means we have 10 or so avenues that we can
Mm,
work on to manage that. And just that reminder, even if you don't know what to do about it at this moment, hopefully can spark a little bit of hope. And yeah, go ahead.
no, no.
Oh, yeah. And so, um, and what I ask when I'm in my work, sometimes when patients reach out to me and they are really in that really low mood, I
Mm,
remind them I just need we can, I can help you get better and you can help yourself get better. get better. You just need to be safe. That's one thing, because it's very different when this is
Yeah.
pushing us into an unsafe situation, when
Yeah.
the adrenaline drive and the pain is so high. And remember, the brain doesn't want pain. It's going to try to figure out how to move away from that, right? And sometimes the idea of dying and suicide gives a little bit of, yeah, like you said, that relief from rest. Yeah. And the death could, you picture it, you know, for some people, yes, it looks restful. Yeah, well, we want that in these moments of pain, right? But it's also, we also have to honor how the nervous system works. If that upset is too much, you know, it may drive you to a quick decision of hurting yourself, which is something that we need to buy time so that we can recruit our front part of our brain to
Yeah.
logically get curious and understand and plan for how to be happy or to overcome. So I need you to be safe. I need you to have just a little bit of motivation or drive to just understand what's happening so that we can and see if we can find that hope, even if it's just 1% out of like everything else. Yeah, what's happening.
Yeah, it's such a rich and complex conversation. Part of me's really wanting all humanity to explore this new idea that what if feeling through this suicidality is actually perfect? There is nothing to fix. And
Mm-hmm.
that going into it and surrendering into the wisdom of the body, because it's not 10 things influencing us, it's countless things. We are
Yes.
interconnected with an entire massive universal ecosystem, and we're surrounded by all sorts of complex politics, environmental crises, how
Mm-hmm.
many relationships we're juggling, how many systems, how many structures, how many, and this is all the concentric circles of our world. And then, of course, we've got some of those inner ones of do I have loved ones? Am I supported?
Mm-hmm.
Am I eating? Am I nourished? Am I sleeping? Is there sleep hygiene? Do I have spirituality? Am I connected to my sacred divinity? And I think once we start to shift away from this paradigm of sickness, broken, fix,
Mm-hmm.
and go, well, actually, I'm this incredible complex human body. I'm making sense of a complex world. And part of that is getting right out of the head and the problem solving and dropping into the body and letting the body neurologically recalibrate itself and reorganize itself and rearrange itself and make sense of all the threads. And as we
Mm-hmm.
sit through that, which, yes, requires safety and patience and self-trust, which are all things we can learn. So it's okay if you've got no idea what safety is.
Mm-hmm.
You can learn safety. I had to learn safety. I've got the complex PTSD kind of picture in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And these are these are learnable skills and qualities that we can start to explore gently. Um, and as you were talking earlier, Gretchen, I could just see the addiction pathway here. It's like when the pain's
Mm-hmm.
so big, we want to go for that comfort numbing, for that quick fix. And simply starting by noticing and observing how we experience our body and understanding how to cultivate our own internal safety, connection, and belonging. When you know how to cultivate your own neurological safety, connection, and belonging, the outer world can't take it away from you. It's massively
Mm-hmm.
important. So these are foundational skills. How do I anchor myself? How do I
Mm-hmm.
locate my own center? So I'm not hooking on to externals, whether it's a person, a place, a drug, sex, food. How do I anchor myself? Because the turbulent, intense times of life will come. And let's face it, people who experience existentialism and suicidality probably have an inbuilt genetic sense of intensity. It's just the way our nervous system works. Not everybody is born this way, and it's okay.
Yeah.
The diversity is actually really beautiful. And
Yes.
as we get these deep darks, we get the deep ecstatic highs too. We get the equal and opposite neurological experience. So,
Mm-hmm.
circling back to what if everything we feel is perfectly custom designed for you to feel through, to block that, to fight it, to suppress it, to re-engage the fight, flight, freeze, fawn patterns. is simply delaying the inevitable, which is your body calling you home to feel what you are born to feel. You are designed to feel it. And I think, my opinion, most human beings are terrified of their bodies. They're terrified of feeling, and
Mm-hmm.
they will do anything to not feel, you know? And so we're living in this externalized world of running away, chasing pleasure, and running away from pain, when actually the middle road is probably more what it means to be truly human, to be
Mm-hmm.
open to pleasure and to be open to pain and to shift out of bias and judgment and to learn to ride those full waves. I actually call them orgasm waves,
Yes.
sensation waves, and to widen our window of tolerance to experience more of life without needing to shut down, fight, flight, freeze, fawn. It's a process, it's
Yes.
learnable, and there are a lot of really core skills that we can break down and practice in daily life in really safe ways. I'll just finish by
Yes.
saying we don't want to be practicing safety or anchoring in a panic attack. You know, these are skills we learn when we're actually feeling solid in ourselves. So we sort of have a toolkit and we
Mm-hmm.
prepare ourselves for the very stormy days.
Mm-hmm. Several things. I love everything that you said. Um, Something that's coming to mind is this idea of really your trusting your body,
Mm.
trusting your brain is really awesome. Your nervous system is so awesome. It is capable of so
Mhm.
many things. I always imagine um, having a very big platter that can hold all emotions.
Mhm.
And and yes, part of the skill actually, if one is trying to really understand how to manage these emotions, is knowing that there's each emotion is has a gift. It's an information that can tell you when
Yes.
I feel this, this is how my body feels, and this is how my mind thinks, and this is what I do. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's a great tool because all of us are going to experience anger, pain, and all of that stuff, along with all the pleasure and
Mhm.
joy, all of those things. But there is benefit to understanding all emotions,
Mhm.
and also it's practice, like you said. You're if we are if we have our toolkit in managing in the moment, kind of in the moment distress, yeah, as long as you have that toolkit, it's kind of like whatever life brings you, bring it on because I can practice. Yeah. And then you
Exactly.
sit, yeah, you sit in that distress for a little bit, and then I for me, it's fun to challenge myself and like how let me see if I can just widen my box just by an inch. Yeah. And then
Mhm.
next time 2 inches. And then you realize that it's correct. My brain is capable of so much. Like my heart, my person, whole being is capable of so much as long as I am open and I'm directing it a certain way.
Yeah.
And the direction is not like you're forcing or controlling or micromanaging. The direction is listening to all the signals that your body and your mind and your heart is giving you. And you are right to surrender to that. Actually, it's a self-exploration.
Yeah. And I sometimes I simplify it down for my audience into it's like we have two directions we can go neurologically speaking. If we go very, very simple. So we have this information come in from the outer world, whether it's,
Mm-hmm.
sound or movement or touch or concepts or relationships, emotions, someone very angry might walk into the room and our body picks up on their anger,
Yeah.
right? So I'm picking up on the mood of the room, literally. This is
Mm-hmm.
happening through our neuroception and taking it all in. What happens is the body and the brain, they decide, okay, is this a threat and dangerous? Or is this safe and something I can connect to or learn from? And if we really simplify it, is it fear or is it love? And so I
Mm-hmm.
think, as Gretchen says, we're learning to sit with all that we're feeling and direct it, is we're learning to notice, am I in my body in this moment, checking in with judgment, shame, and fear, fighting what I feel, trying to get rid of it? Or am I just pausing that little bit longer and going, oh, I'm judging myself. I'm re-instigating fear loops, which has a biochemical effect through the entire nervous system.
Mhm.
Or am I just staying that little bit longer to breathe and say, oh, Joey, it makes sense you feel this. I'm here for you, Joey.
Mhm.
Let's connect to this feeling, Joey. Let's breathe together. And what I do is I biochemically shift into love, loving
Mhm.
awareness, loving
Mhm.
friendship, loving compassion. I biochemically change the experience head to toe. And this is really key. People get so fixed on symptoms like a tight knot or a repeating thought or a certain person or a certain relationship, you know. But what about if we can really expand into the whole body, head to toe? Because it's actually not the brain, it's the whole body. The brain is
Mhm.
part of the body.
Mhm.
Um, we make it a whole body experience, which allows that interconnected integration of the neural signals. So
Mhm.
staying present with loving awareness is easier said than
Yes.
done, but that's what we're learning to do more often wherever we are.
Yes. 100%. An example is a lot of people come to my clinic and present a problem, let's say suicidal thoughts
Yeah.
from a breakup. Let's just
Yeah.
use that as an example. Yeah. I want to fix this. I want to fix this relationship. I want to get rid of this stuff. But you know, the first things we actually learn to address it is exactly what you're describing. The mindful practice of now and acknowledging all of these signals. Yeah.
Mm.
Because it's hard to think through what
Mm.
happened, you know, what can I do? What do I want next in my life, in my relationship? It's hard to think of those things. Or even in cognitive behavioral therapy, it's hard to remember how do I challenge, you know, this thought again. If your if your body is not in that present,
Mm.
curious, kind to yourself state. And so I love that you describe that because it's such, I believe, at least in my practice, and I've seen it in so many patients, it really is a core
It's where
skill.
it starts.
Yes, and it can look very different for different people. A body scan can look different for everyone.
Oh, yeah. And that's actually part of the exploration. I've had clients who connect to themselves on a trampoline while listening to certain music. And so all of that vestibular input and movement is helping
Mm,
them organize their neural sensations.
mhm,
Whereas I generally personally prefer stillness, dark rooms, quietness,
mhm,
you know, maybe sitting, maybe lying, sometimes on my stomach, but finding ways to access core neurological safety in my body on my
mhm.
terms. It's a unique personal inquiry. And guess what? As we change throughout life, all of this changes. We are constantly reinventing ourselves, you know, and
Yeah.
a huge kind of bombshell example of that is menopause. You know, you have a
Mhm,
different body. And so we have to let go of all of our habits, things that
mhm.
quote unquote used to feel good or used to feel nourishing,
Yes.
and discover, well, what's making me feel juicy now? What's connecting me to me now? Where's my aliveness? So instead of always focusing on the pains and fixing the quote unquote broken bits, how can I actually re-engage my values? What really matters to me? What do I stand for? Desire, aliveness, eros, sensation. So we're moving from window of tolerance in a pain and trauma language, actually integrating that conversation with those waves of orgasm, which means we're able to hold both the big pleasure feelings, which can happen walking on the beach, smelling a flower. I'm not
Yes.
talking
Mhm,
specifically about sex here,
mhm,
but enabling our experience to expand beyond the pain and to incorporate also pleasure, which helps us balance out those deep suicidal moments. If we stop ourselves feeling, which by the way is normal, makes sense, and Gretchen and I have both done it. So when we suppress, deny, ignore all of those human things, we stop ourselves feeling all of it. So many of my clients will have forgotten joy, disconnected from pleasure, that they haven't had access to that full breadth of their human experience. And often
Mm.
the key that unlocks it is moving into the pain with this loving awareness. And what do
Yes.
you know? The pleasure opens up. So we go into the grief and the pain, more pleasure opens up. It's the equal and opposite vibration through the body. And I would describe that. This is sort of my personal observation as opposed to hard science.
Mm.
But it's like we have this vibrational experience in the body as a package. And if we take it through the lens of fear and threat, we get the pain signal. But if we take that exact same vibrational pattern through the lens of loving awareness, we get more of a pleasure signal with connection and oxytocin. And so we're learning to live more often through that lens of love and beauty. And we often learn that by starting with fear. So they're connected.
Yes, they are connected. And I think the overall theme too is reminding yourself and practicing that you can feel emotions, just like
Yeah.
remembering how to feel it, whether it's pain or pleasure. Now we're in business because now if you can feel pain, that means you have the capacity to feel the opposite. You can
Which is
feel all.
which is
Yeah.
aliveness. That you know how
Yes.
I said we want to be in the center, not chasing pleasure and not running away from pain. When
Mhm.
we sit in the middle, we're accessing our aliveness, right?
Mm.
Because if we're chasing pleasure all the time, we're not actually present. We want to be over
Mm.
there rather than just going, well, actually, here's where I'm alive. This is what's
Yes.
alive in my neurology
Mm.
right now. There's nowhere else to be. This is
Mm.
the destination arrived. And from
Mm.
there, we actually get creative. And guess what?
Yeah.
Creativity is a huge part of our human health. And so, swinging back to these suicidality moments, often as I really go down and get into it and really touch into the edges of the darkness, and I start to get somewhere sacred, creativity pops out the other end. It's so
Mm.
fascinating. So it's really, I think, beautiful to awaken what feels to me. I mean, I can't describe this in any intellectual, academic, theoretical certainty because I think it's all mystical, quite
Yeah.
frankly. But as
Yes.
I surrender into the mystery of the body and trust its intelligence, and I get down to these very deep, poignant places, it does feel as though my soul and the collective consciousness, like something bigger than me, is landing and having a conversation, and I'm receptive to this gift that's passing through me. And it
Mm.
almost feels like the pain and the intensity is opening the gateway. It's going down into receive this very sacred
Mm.
and soulful experience. So if I
Mm.
avoid the pain, I miss the gift. And I think a lot
Mm.
of my vertigo and tinnitus clients will say, I hated this tinnitus. It was killing me. And now I understand it and I'm on the other side. It was the best gift, best thing that ever happened to me. So it
Yes.
really, there's a gift behind the pain, I think, once we learn these skills. And it's really important to keep the conversation balanced that
Yeah.
with every pain there will be a pleasure.
Yes. So with these suicidal thoughts or phases, we can think of it as it's a an invitation to get to know what
Yeah.
is going on and what does your body need? What does it need now? Or where are we at? Are we in the past? Are we in the future? Or are we here? Like
And
what
I,
you said.
yes. And I want to take the conversation even further because, listeners, I
Mm.
believe in your power. I deeply believe in how powerful you are. Every single one of you listening, you are shaping the world that we live in. You are creating it. You are co-creating it. Every breath, every thought, every word, every action, the way you choose to spend your money, the way you vote, the way you treat people, the way you treat yourself. You are literally shaping your community, and that has ripple effect. When we go down into these deep suicidal places, I believe, yes, of course, we need to learn how to get our own needs met. We always have to connect to ourselves first before we're even able to connect to the outer world, right? Because if we're not
Agree.
connected to ourselves, we're living with a mask and people are just getting a little bit of us, not the full thing. So yes, as Gretchen said, of course, we need to really look in and say, why am I so low? Like, is there something here that what can I do to help strengthen myself? And part of that could actually be, I'm in a toxic workplace. I need to speak up for this pattern that is not working for me. And you know what? It's not working for anyone. And then you shape your workplace because you're brave, you're listening to the body and you're taking that information and speaking up. Or it could be, I need to talk to my partner about a few things that are really deeply important to me. And it's going to be a challenging conversation. And I'm going to have to put time into preparing myself for this conversation. And as you take those steps to honor your needs, you're also shaping the outer world because you're shaping the relationships and therefore impacting other people's lives. And this is the reciprocity and interconnectedness that we're not these isolated, separate
Mhm.
beings. We're not objects. We're porous beings. And everything we do has an impact and an influence upon everything else around us. And I feel like there's something in this conversation that can help awaken our sense of sovereignty and power. That feeling the true depth of your being is teaching you how to use your body as a compass, how to direct your own life, how to take your power back, and how to shape the world,
Mhm.
which is such a different story to, oh, I'm suicidal again. What's wrong with me? I'm broken. I mean, this is a
Mhm.
radical reframe.
Yes, I love that you use reframe because one, we're free to reframe anytime, anywhere, however it is. And hopefully we're choosing towards health, and emotional freedom
Mm,
and addressing to addressing your needs so you can do make the positive ripple. You were right about the interconnectedness and how we affect our environment because we are absorbing all of this information. We are giving off information that other people absorb. And so
mm,
in addition to if it all feels overwhelming to think about, well, where can I start, right? How can I
mm,
figure out my mind or my emotions?
mm,
I think a good way to start is think of always like three things. We talked a lot about, okay, let's listen to our body, like a body functions
mm,
physically. And then let's get curious, like what are we feeling and thinking? So now we're on the mind psychology part.
mm,
I the third part that I always think about is your surroundings, your environment, and this is what we're talking about because it could be that yeah, there was information about a toxic workplace or a
mm.
challenging relationship, the things that we're looking at online, like the
Yes.
news that we're watching, all of that are energy and information that our brain has to process and interact with our feelings and our mind. And so if we just pause and figure out in this moment, okay, which ones could be something that I need to address, then that's I think that's the power of the getting curious about our feelings because then we can understand.
Yeah. And my sense, my sense is that too often people are doing this from their mind. They're trying to figure things out with their mind. And I think there's a Tao saying you can't fix a problem with the same minds that created it.
Yes.
And this is where I feel dropping right into the somatics and the sensory landscapes of the body, where we're out of a lot of linguistics and logic and beliefs
Mm-hmm.
and habits and traumas. The traumas live between the ears and the midbrain.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe when we drop into this body scanning space, we enter the prefrontal cortex. There
Mm-hmm.
is the body scan itself regulates the emotional overwhelm. So it's very powerful. So we're now not in the same mind that created the problem. We're in the body, right? The head to toe body. And my sense is when people learn how to connect to themselves, cultivate this loving awareness and loving friendship, and just stay there a bit longer, this is when the body as the compass becomes a very real tool because it becomes clear to me, okay, there's a million things affecting me.
Mm-hmm.
That's overwhelming. But
Yeah.
when I drop right into the moment present here and now in the sensory landscapes, it becomes exceptionally clear what is the core thing I need to move toward in this moment. All of the options clarify down into an actionable space, which
Mm-hmm.
honestly sometimes can be, I need to have early nights for the rest of the week. I'm
Yes.
simply exhausted. I need to go to my
Mm-hmm.
calendar, cancel, postpone, delegate, automate. I need to honor myself this
Mm-hmm.
entire week and just feeling like, okay, I'm going to take my power back. I'm going to give myself a real priority and I'm going to reclaim my sleep pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's very simple in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's certain people. You might say, okay, I think this friendship is toxic. I'm going to experiment with not seeing that person for a month and just see how I feel and what comes. So we're unmerging,
Yes.
right? Unmerging from a
Yes.
toxic relationship. And we're giving ourselves a practical strategy about how to do that by getting that space and realigning our boundaries. So as we drop right into the body, I think the simplicity of the next move
Mm-hmm.
becomes clearer to us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when we're swimming up here in all of the problems and trying to solve things from the mind, we can end up being cluttered and confused and kind of repeating the same.
Yes.
And as we learn to trust the body, the reason we don't do this, I think collectively for the most part, is because we drop right into the unknown. We go
Mm-hmm.
right into the unfamiliar and the unknown, and we're in this messy, dark place of sensation
Mm-hmm.
without
Mm-hmm.
so many stories and words and ideas and footholds and diagnoses and labels and things that ease our anxiety. And so part of this process of what I call sensing ground is really learning to become friends with the mystery and not knowing and not needing to know, sitting in the mess
Mm-hmm.
and trusting that with time, things will make sense. And they will make
Mm-hmm.
sense through that whole body integration, more so than, journaling, talking about it, heady. And if we can solve things through talk therapy and journaling, we do. It
Mm-hmm.
resolves. So when we get into these stickier, messier places, often we have to really go into the body and let the intelligence of the somatics work the magic,
Mm-hmm.
this neural integration.
Absolutely. I don't think you can separate the, you can just work on one or the other. And I think that's one I hear over and over from people I work with that that's why maybe they've waited so long or they had a certain experience with other providers because it was so one-sided. But you can't, like,
Mhm.
you can't do the thinking part and the clarifying part without being in touch with your physical body and knowing how it shows up,
Yeah.
in your body, these feelings and emotion. And once we learn how to do that, it can be the progress is faster. Yeah. And
Yes.
also the one when you said just getting into the body and then learning how to sit with the mystery,
Mhm.
even and simplifying things, even that gives us a starting point. And that's where we begin rather
Yeah,
than trying to figure out like which one to start, what do I do?
totally. Totally. And I want to let you listeners know, I mean, I've been really deeply inquiring. This is kind of like my special interest that has fascinated me for 25 years. Whenever I drop into my body, guess what? I go right into the mystery. I'm just like you as a first-time beginner. So it's really, we're learning how to, I say to my clients, it's like walking out into the rain, having your palms facing up and catching raindrops. You never know what raindrop you may or may not catch. You are catching, you don't know what you're going to catch. You go into this place of pure receptivity. Um, So sometimes I feel like we fall into this trap of wanting to master things and wanting to know things and wanting it to be quick and we want to have a micromanaging plan, this addiction to certainty. When I actually think a really, really key skill for our collective, for all of us, is weaning ourselves off the addiction to certainty and learning to sit in not knowing. And actually, the more quote unquote advanced we get, the more practiced we get, the more we sit in the not knowing. It's backwards.
And
I
it's
mean,
liberating.
it's liberation is the word. It is liberating. And don't get me wrong, there's times when it's still uncomfortable and we doubt ourselves, and because we're swimming in this paradigm of fear and separation and certainty, and there's a lot of beliefs and stories that challenge this radical trust in the body and bodily intelligence. You know, we're kind of taught, look outside of yourself. The answers are out there. And so we end up on this collective goose chase for
Mhm.
fulfillment and liberation when really I think we all need to pause and turn inwards. And for those of you listening who have this gift of intensity, your body's pulling you in with a stronger pull, and following that intensity safely and with this skill set is liberation, and it's free. Like your body is taking you in to your own sacred belonging and this place of individuation as a unique, incredible, miraculous being on our planet, and simultaneously interconnected with everything, that we
Mhm.
are all connected. And I really feel like our bodies are calling us home into this universal truth. And exactly what I want to just second and agree with what Gretchen said about the body, mind, body, it's one thing. You know, body, mind, soul. It's
Yes.
it's all there.
Mhm.
And the way I kind of describe it, if this is useful for anyone listening, is I feel like that the body is our vehicle and the body is our communicating, incredible transmitter. And so we're learning to read all of this invisible information around us through our senses, of course, and emotions and all of this interoception. It's happening. The body's talking to us way beyond language. So much nonverbal information everywhere. And as we go through life, we map experiences, right? And
Mhm.
stories that in our
Mhm.
connective tissue and in our neurons. And so we can build up these kind of trauma habits and patterns and fight, flight, freeze, fear if we're not metabolizing and digesting at the end of every day. You know, ideally, we give ourselves time every day to digest the day and to empty
Mhm.
ourselves and to come back to this soft, exquisite animal. So the sensations in our bodies sometimes are like little stories that have been mapped into our library. And so we might have a tension, let's say, around the left shoulder or something. And that tension, which is in the body, will be connected to something in your mind of an emotional story, narrative, belief, idea. And we're learning to work with both together. So we're not divorcing ourselves from the body and getting focused on some script. And we're not sort of maybe in the body focused on a symptom without thinking about what it's connected to. So it's almost like our sensations are little packages that give us the full physical, mental, emotional, spiritual information. And
Mhm.
we're learning to open up our awareness to decode the language of the body. So my body's not giving me pain because it's my enemy and it hates me. My body's giving me pain because it's saying, Joey, bring your attention here. Bring your loving, conscious awareness here. There's something you're ready to release. I've been holding this for you because you haven't been old enough yet, right? You don't have the skills yet. This is a big one, but you're ready. And so my body says, let's release this. It's a really old story. You learned this when you were 4. Let's breathe it through and release it. You don't need this anymore. And then it softens. I get a new story. I take my power back and I carry on with my life. So we're
Mhm.
learning to be in the whole body. And I want to say it can be really simple.
Yes.
And that's important that we don't search for complexity or complication because it can feel like I've got a chronic illness. No, no, it can't possibly be that. Yeah, it can be that simple that we are consistently every single day emptying stories that don't belong to us, the stories that say I'm not good enough, I need to try harder, I'm alone, I'm isolated, I'm hopeless, I'm powerless. Those stories do not belong to you. They do not belong to
Mhm.
me, and they do not belong to Gretchen because we are enough. We do have power. And we need to reclaim and rewrite our stories through the somatic body. Speaking into the mirror is unlikely to really cut it because that's a divorced process. It's got to come through that embodied, uh, interconnected process within.
Mhm. I love how you describe that. One of the things I always say is, what is something is up, either
Mm,
physically or like emotionally. The first question is, what is your body trying to tell you? It's trying to catch your attention onto something. Could be a story, like you said, it could be something physical, but the first thing really is you acknowledge, give it attention, and then get curious. Yeah.
mm,
And I love your what you said. We gotta have a debrief or cleanse, at the end of the day.
yeah,
I actually do that like 2 or 3 times a day. I think of my day as like, okay, if something comes up in the morning, I know that by midday I have my two
yeah,
minute rest or meditation, and I'm gonna let that go because I'm gonna
yeah,
start again, yeah, for the rest of the day. And
yeah,
so I think figuring out for you for as an individual what does your body like, what does your mind like, as far as how to how to pay attention to these signals and
yeah.
decide what to do about them. Yeah.
Yes, and I think where most people get stuck um is the emptying. I think for whatever reason we it's almost like the fear of missing out. We take on so much. We'll read the news, listen to a podcast. We take on, take on, take on. Like Gretchen and I right now, we are giving you data. You are taking in our ideas and thoughts. That's going into your body. The question is, what's yours to hold on to? Which bits do you need to empty and, shake it out, move it out?
Mhm.
Because, it's like I'm hesitant to use words like energetics because it can sound woo-woo, but we have a lot of information coming into our neurology and into our system, and we also need the equal amount going out, right? It's like
Yes.
eating food. We
Mhm.
need an excretion process for our mental, emotional, spiritual health.
Mhm.
And I think that's where most of my clients struggle. It's this idea of emptying. And for me, I would describe the emptying. I've become more specific in it, mostly from an educator point of view, but it's actually profoundly helped me, to be honest.
Mhm.
Is rather than to be all woo-woo and like, okay, I'm just releasing all that doesn't belong to me in like a blanket statement, to the more specific you can be about, I just had this weird conversation at work. I noticed I took on a belief of shame that I'm wrong. I'm just going to pause, breathe into that. I'm going to release that I am wrong, I am shame story. You can do it in the bathroom at work, wherever you are. And I'm going to take a few breaths into that I'm allowed to be me and I'm allowed to feel what I feel. And maybe that person is having a challenging day. So, what we've
Mhm.
done is we've identified a projection that someone's given me an
Mhm.
emotional heaviness. I've gone, ooh, that doesn't feel right. I'm going to empty that with the story and belief that I took on. I'm going to come back into my softness, into my biochemical space of oxytocin and loving awareness. And I'm also going to acknowledge that that person might be having a difficult day, and that shame is their shame, not mine. So this is where I end and where they begin. I'm becoming clear in my own aliveness. So
Mhm.
it's a way of life because we're constantly bumping up against people's
Yes.
projections. So it's not like we go to a therapist and we're done. This is a way of engaging with the world, like eating and going to
Absolutely.
the toilet. It's the invisible digestion.
I think also for those who are going to therapy, for example, I think the magic happens in between the sessions. It's
Yes,
the
yes,
practice, the daily practice when life is giving you opportunities to pull up a skill, get to your body, and then remember the skill.
yeah,
And how you described about the letting go of these stories, it's important. It's helpful to remember that you're in control. You're in control of what to hold on to, what
yeah,
to let go.
yeah,
And yes, because of our patterns and life stories from before, sometimes we may need a little bit of guidance to kind of like understand that and everything. But at the end of the day, you can still choose. You can
yeah,
choose what to take in and what to leave out.
And that right there is power. That's how we take our power back. We are always in choice with what we hold on to in our body. How we
Mhm.
relate to ourselves and how we relate to the world is choice. And we are always in control of that choice. We only lose that choice when we leave ourselves and we overly
Mhm.
prioritize the external world. And that's when we've lost our boundaries. We're merging, we're probably projecting and being projected upon. And every day just feels a little bit not quite right. So we start doing what we think we should do because we're not actually sure where we are or who we are. We've lost our compass. And that can make us actually quite vulnerable to being manipulated and influenced and all of these things. So taking our power back is incredibly powerful.
Yes, yes,
And often I
yes.
notice my clients' symptoms and bodily sensations resolve once they've taken their power back because they're now in a process of emptying themselves, locating themselves in their center and anchoring as a way of life.
I love the idea of anchoring because I can picture it.
Yeah.
And and I think it's when everything else gets complicated, that's
Yes.
the question that I also ask is what's your truth? What's true to you? Who are you? What are your values? What's important to you? And even in my own life, in the most complex situations, if I'm faced with a hard decision, if I'm
Yeah.
confused, I take time to get back to what's really me and what are my values because it always that
Yeah.
compass always guides me even
Yeah.
if it's a hard decision that I have to make.
And it often will be. So fatigue and confusion
Mhm.
are bodily signals
Yes.
calling us inwards to realign the compass. When we are fatigued and confused, it's extremely likely that we are carrying stories that do not belong to us. And that's why we're cluttered and confused and disoriented. And we're like, what's wrong with me? Why am I so tired? We've actually subconsciously absorbed something, and the body's going, this doesn't belong. Come in,
Yes.
clear it out, and come back to me. And so this is where we
Mhm.
need these skills like cleaning our teeth, the plaque's
Mhm.
building up. So we,
Yes.
we need we need to honor these body signals rather than shame ourselves and go buy vitamins, which is again externalizing.
Mhm.
So we buy multivitamins when there is a need for that multivitamin. I think it's important that we learn to read these bodily signals in really holistic ways. But
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
I love what you're adding to the conversation, Gretchen. I can feel your lived
Mhm.
experience of it, which is really beautiful.
Yes, and just from my work, it's I have seen a rainbow, a variety of how low moods and suicidality, and even people who have attempted, how it shows up
Yeah.
so differently in so many people. And I'm thinking about, as I was preparing for this, I was thinking about certain people that I've worked with were coming to mind. And I remember, the one thing that they always say is through these conversations and acknowledging and coming back to the body, getting to know myself, it's where
Mm,
it was hope that comes out of that. And that from there we start the figuring out the aliveness again.
yeah,
And it
aliveness.
doesn't and the main thing here is you have to you have to choose to give time to search and understand, the body and your feelings.
Yeah.
And you have, like you said, you have to be patient. It takes time. Some people takes months, years. Some people
Yes.
take many years. But that's many years of being alive and holding both pain and pleasure and doing the things in life. So yeah, be patient and trust. The trust in yourself is so important. The trust in your body, the trust in
Yeah.
your capacity to understand and find meaning
Mm.
is very important.
And the main reason we are hosting this conversation is because both of us would really like to invite all of you listeners to bring your stories forward. Find your communities. I host communities that are inclusive of these suicidality, existentialist conversations. And that's meaningful because people like to know they're not alone. It's very touching. I host monthly soul and grief tending circles where we go through an embodiment practice, we touch in, and if people choose and want to, there's a confidentiality sharing space where we speak from the body and from vulnerability, and being seen and witnessed does something to our brain. We are social creatures. Our ancestors had grief rituals where they could sing and dance and be witnessed in their pain. And we've lost it. So we're bringing back this human connection that it's safe, it's beautiful, it's welcome to feel it all and be witnessed and belonging. And in between each speaker, we empty. We let that story move us and shape us and enter us. And we empty ourselves before the next speaker. And these are the skills we need in daily life. And I think we're relearning them, we're practicing them. And I think when we're drowning in privacy and shame, we miss some of these core neurological experiences of belonging, community, normalizing the breadth of human experience. It's not all like the TV and the magazines. There is such beauty to
Mhm.
the richness of all of it, the taboo, all of it. We need everything belongs and we need spaces for that. So I urge you to find your people
Mhm.
and to allow these conversations to be safely explored and shared. Hmm.
Yes. And your people could be, it could be, yes, it could be a professional, but it could be your friend, it could be your family, it could be a mentor, it could be a new group that you're going into. But there is really power in connecting. Like you said, neurochemically,
Oh,
it
yeah.
there's a process that happens that
Yeah.
helps us lift the emotion a bit and bring us to a space of healing and
Being
finding, yeah.
being seen and heard. We might
Yeah.
start winding the conversation up, and
Yes.
this is like a massive topic. It's like, yeah, let's finish with another massive. But something we've been talking about in my Sensing Ground community is the astronomical, enormous, humongous difference between being seen in your truth and judged, which means
Mhm.
you're being pathologized, you're being labeled, you're being fixed, getting given advice.
Mhm.
These are comments like people saying, maybe you should get professional help. Like that's a judgment. It's coming
Mhm.
across as helping, but it's actually someone saying, I feel uncomfortable with your intensity and I think you should go somewhere, right? Being
Mhm.
seen and judged really hurts and really reinforces the isolation and the drowning. So
Mhm.
choose your people wisely.
Yes.
Being seen and known, okay? This is game changing. When you find people who are comfortable in their own intensity, who know their body, who can go to these dark places and breathe with you and be like, you're doing it. This is so beautiful to witness. Keep going. I've got goosebumps. It's amazing to actually be witnessed. There's no advice,
Yeah.
there's no complication, there's no labels. It's just like, wow, you are so beautifully breathing through this. I am privileged to witness where you are right now.
Yes.
And there's
And
no worry, there's no concern. It's just beautiful to be seen and known. I wish that for every human being on the planet.
same here, Joey. I feel the same. And for those who are seeing professionals, the same rule applies. I don't think anyone should be forced into treatment or continue a therapy session or a treatment relationship with someone when you are not being heard, when you feel like you're being judged. If that is happening, it is not the right person. And it is
Yeah.
not a helpful person. And you're
Oh, you're
you're in
making me want to
control.
cry.
Yeah, because many people feel like they're
I know.
pressured to be in a
To
treatment
fix.
relationship.
Yeah.
Yes, but even there is a way where you can be at the guidance of someone, professionally, without feeling like you're broken, that
Yeah.
there's something to fix. And that is a skill of a good therapist, psychiatrist, and you deserve that if you are going to seek help. Don't settle
Yes.
for
I
something
want to
less.
um I want to say we're all learning. We're all on our human journey. And part of knowing this relationship, because it's like, oh, how do I know? Which is my therapist? There is a feeling in the body of natural, grounded, expansive connection that I don't have to hide. I don't have to fawn for this therapist. That something just drops into an authentic truth, and the body kind of goes, oh, thank God. That there is a somatic softening around
Mhm.
safe people.
Mhm.
Contrast this to I've I've only had the experience of feeling complicated walking away from therapists, which is partially because I am so intense and I've got complexity and depth and intensity, which is challenging for another human to match. So I didn't know that in my younger days. So I would always walk away from any level of professional therapy just feeling worse, feeling judged, feeling complicated because I didn't match their expectations or their templates, or they didn't know what to do with me. So it just wasn't a nervous system match.
Mhm.
And so I share that because if you're not feeling quite right in your chosen therapeutic scenario, that's all part of learning. That's, sometimes knocking up against dissonance and mismatch is part of learning to walk away and honor that. But just to recognize that there is somebody out there for you, there is community out there for you. Um, and to be seen and known is game changing. It's softening, it's expanding, expansive, and it's centering. You will know it when you feel it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I 1,000% you'll know it. You'll know it when you feel it. Yes.
Yeah. And the truth is that you can say if you agree with this or not, but I suspect most of us have actually normalized and habituated to being seen and judged, and we think that's normal because we're living in a world that's predominantly based on this fear and separation paradigm. That's the way our society has been built over hundreds of years. And so coming back into the womb, that mother-child bond of effortlessness, interconnectedness, unconditional love, that's pretty rare. It's pretty rare. And that's what we're talking about. It's coming back into this very natural state of reciprocity with nervous systems.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm,
And I think that helps us get grounded and feel solid about who we are. And when you have that, the judging, the opinions of others, it doesn't,
yeah,
it just bounces away. Yeah.
true.
Because it does not matter. You are grounded. You know
If,
who you are.
if
Yeah.
someone says you're not enough, you're like, yeah, I am.
Yeah. That's what I say all the time. Yes,
Funny you
you
would say
are.
that.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Yeah.
make sense to me. Are you feeling okay? Yeah, once we know ourselves, we don't gaslight ourselves anymore. And the
Yeah.
outer world is
Yes.
no longer our benchmark. We're not trying to prove anything. We're not chasing compliments or validation. We've got that inside. And that's that core neurological need of safety, connection, and belonging to yourself.
Yes.
Game changing. I want to send so much love out to all of our listeners. It's been a big conversation, and chances are, if you've clicked on this topic, you may even know these very deep, dark places. I want you to know you're not alone. We are here for you. For those of you who are looking for community, visit seekingbalance.com.au. I've got my Rocksteady and my Sensing Ground communities. We have monthly calls, soul tending circles. It's rich, it's beautiful, and all people are welcome. And Gretchen, did you want to share a little bit about how to find you?
Yes, I'm new to the online education space, but I do have a website where I share some of my insights. Many people say I'm a pretty different psychiatrist because I really look at things very holistically, which has worked for me and many of the people I work with for all
Yeah,
of these years. But it's thementalpath.com. And I also share some videos on Instagram. If you're on Instagram, it's at the_mental_path. Thank you for having me here. This has
yeah.
been a gift actually to be able to share some of my thoughts
It's
here.
beautiful. We'll stay in touch and I'll pop links into wherever we share this beautiful conversation.
Thank you.
Much love to all of our listeners today. Thank you for sharing this conversation with us. And it's a little bye for now.